Welcome to the debate. Imagine picking up a phone call on a random Tuesday and it's a loved one.
Right.
You hear their exact voice, the exact same cadence and stutter they always have, and they're in a complete panic, begging for money to get out of an emergency.
Yeah, that's completely terrifying.
It really is. Or maybe you're scrolling your feed on a lunch break and you watch a video of a world leader declaring an unprovoked war. You feel that sudden drop in your stomach. You see the evidence with your own eyes, only to find out hours later that, well, none of it ever happened.
Which is a scenario we're seeing more and more of.
Exactly. So are we entering an era where deepfakes will end trust forever? We really want to hear your perspectives on this as the discussion unfolds, so please leave your thoughts and comments on the platform. Today, we are exploring the profound vulnerability introduced by generative AI and synthetic media. We're looking at whether this technology represents a fatal blow to our shared reality.
It's the question of our time, really. I mean, we are sitting at this crucial technological crossroads.
We absolutely are, and I've been looking at the data, the sheer volume of synthetic content flooding our networks, and honestly, I am deeply concerned. My position is that deepfakes are fundamentally destroying epistemic trust. We are rapidly approaching an irreversible, what's called a generative AI paradox, where society will be forced to rationally discount all digital evidence.
And while I absolutely agree that the threat is severe, I look at the historical and technological evidence and see a different trajectory. I argue that trust is not ending, it is evolving. Society possesses the technological, institutional, and psychological adaptive capacity to mitigate these risks. We are already establishing new frameworks for authenticity, moving beyond just looking at the pixels to verifying the processes behind the media.
To understand why I see this as a breaking point, we really need to look at what generative AI has actually enabled over the last few years. We're no longer talking about simple manipulation. We are talking about, well, industrialized deception.
Meaning the friction of creating a fake is completely gone?
Exactly. It is no longer a team of skilled animators spending weeks altering a video frame by frame. Tools like generative adversarial networks, GANs, and advanced diffusion models allow almost anyone with a smartphone to create hyper-realistic visual and audio deceptions in minutes. And this brings us to a concept formalized by researcher Emilio Ferrara, the generative AI paradox.
Right, the economic imbalance of truth.
Spot on. As synthetic media becomes ubiquitous and essentially indistinguishable from authentic content, the cost of verifying what's real becomes prohibitively high. You have to hire forensic experts, run algorithms, trace metadata. Meanwhile, the cost of generating a fake is basically zero. This creates a massive market failure in our information ecosystem. When a rational person is faced with a constant, overwhelming barrage of digital evidence that might be fake, the most logical, self-protective response is just to discount all of it.
You just stop believing anything you see online.
Yes. And this isn't just about someone falling for a phishing scam. It shifts society into a permanent state of reality, apathy, or truth fatigue. When people can no longer discern authenticity without exhausting themselves, the foundational consensus required for a functioning democracy simply collapses.
I hear that, and it certainly paints a very dark, dystopian picture. But viewing this as the definitive end of trust feels like a reductive historical perspective to me.
How so?
Because the advent of new visual technologies has almost always been met with this exact kind of panic about the death of truth. I mean, Hollywood has been manipulating reality for decades. Think back to 1994, when the movie Forrest Gump seamlessly blended Tom Hanks into historical footage with JFK. People panicked then, asking how we could ever trust historical archives again. Then we navigated the arrival of Photoshop, which democratized image manipulation and launched the whole era of cheap fakes. Society adapted then, and we are adapting now.
But Forrest Gump took a multi-million-dollar Hollywood studio and massive rendering farms months to produce. Today, a teenager can do it while waiting for the bus. The scale is completely different.
The friction is gone, yes, I concede that. But my point is that our society's ability to adapt to new visual paradigms isn't new. Ferrar's framework also talks about the synthetic reality stack. We don't just look at content in a vacuum anymore. Trust is shifting from the pixels on the screen to the process behind them. We are learning to rely on behavioral and integrity layers rather than raw visual perception. And crucially, we cannot ignore the highly productive applications of this technology.
What kind of productive applications offset the destruction of truth?
Well, deepfakes are being used to generate synthetic datasets right now. We can create thousands of non-existent photorealistic faces to train facial recognition and safety systems. That means we can improve security algorithms without violating anyone's actual personal privacy. It expands the productive capabilities of creators and researchers immensely. It's not just a deception engine, it's a creation engine.
I see why you think that, but let me give you a different perspective on your historical parallel. Photoshop required immense skill, time, and effort to produce a truly convincing manipulation. Generative AI removes that friction entirely, but more importantly, it produces results that completely bypass our biological threat detection.
You mean our physical inability to spot the flaws?
Yes. Humans are simply not equipped to evaluate this level of synthetic realism. Look at the empirical research on this. Dr. Hani Farid's studies show that human evaluators attempting to detect GAN-generated faces are only about 48.2% accurate.
So, literally worse than a coin flip.
Worse than a coin flip. If you just guessed blindly, you'd do better. We are operating with cognitive faculties that evolved over millennia to trust what we see and hear. But because we are so physically vulnerable now, we end up relying entirely on detection algorithms to do the seeing for us. And that leads to what philosophers call algorithmic acrasia.
Let's break that down for a second. Algorithmic acrasia.
Algorithmic acrasia is basically like when you follow your car's GPS straight into a lake, even though you can clearly see the water through the windshield. You surrender your common sense because the machine told you it was a road. In the context of deepfakes, we enter a state where people surrender their cognitive faculties and blindly trust fallible detection algorithms to tell them what is real. If the AI checker says a video is authentic, we believe it, even if our own instincts tell us it's off. We are handing over the determination of reality to machines. That is a dangerous surrender of human agency.
I come at it from a different way. I absolutely acknowledge our perceptual limits. The human eye is no match for a highly refined diffusion model today. But you are assuming our defense relies solely on manual human review or isolated detection algorithms that just stare at a picture and guess. Security is adapting far more holistically than that.
What else is there? If we can't see it and we rely on a machine to see it, we're stuck in that loop.
Not exactly. Take the encode deep sight model, for example. It recognizes that manual review isn't the only defense, and it doesn't just ask, is this video a deepfake? It validates the full session across 3 distinct layers: perception, integrity, and behavior.
Okay, so the perception layer is what we just talked about, analyzing the media itself.
Exactly. That's the layer that might get fooled. But then you have the integrity layer. This verifies the authenticity of the device, the camera hardware, and the actual session connection. And finally, the behavior layer verifies that the interaction flow matches normal human patterns.
Give me a practical example of how that stops a deepfake.
Say a bad actor creates a perfect deepfake overlay for a secure video call to access a bank account. It evades the perception layer because the pixels look flawlessly real. But to get that fake video into the stream, they have to use a virtual camera or inject a synthetic feed. The integrity check catches that the feed isn't coming from a verified hardware sensor. It fails the session regardless of how realistic the pixels look. We are moving beyond trying to spot the fake with our eyes.
I hear that. And that multi-layer technical defense sounds great for a secure banking app or an enterprise logging. But it does absolutely nothing to solve the most insidious psychological threat out in the wild, which is the liar's dividend.
The idea that the existence of fakes makes the truth deniable.
Precisely. Cybersecurity experts coined this term to describe a phenomenon where the greatest threat isn't just people believing fake videos, it is bad actors dismissing genuine, highly damaging evidence by falsely labeling it as AI-generated. The mere existence of deepfakes provides a convenient, plausible alibi for any corrupt politician or corporate criminal caught on tape.
They just say, that wasn't me, that was a deep fake.
Right. So the real danger isn't that we'll believe the fakes, it's that we won't believe the truth. And it works. Recent 2024 polling data showed that 41% of surveyed Republicans believed an entirely authentic video of a politician was AI generated. Let's pause on that. 41%. That is a staggering statistic.
Almost half of the surveyed group looking at a real video and calling it fake.
Yes. It proves that the combination of truth decay and trust decay creates massive space for authoritarianism. If the public has difficulty believing what their own eyes and ears are telling them, even when the information is verified as real, the epistemic security of our society is fundamentally shattered. The liar's dividend weaponizes our skepticism against us.
That is a compelling argument, but have you considered the actual empirical outcomes when this hits the real world? Specifically, look at the 2024 global elections. If the liar's dividend and reality apathy were truly destroying our democratic foundations the way you suggest, we would have seen catastrophic systemic failures at the ballot box. But we didn't.
We saw major, highly coordinated incidents, though.
We did. We saw the AI-generated Biden robocall in the U.S., which attempted to suppress voter turnout in New Hampshire by telling people to stay home. We saw the highly sophisticated audio fake targeting Mikl Šimečka in Slovakia just days before their vote. And we saw the fabricated Amir Khan deepfakes in India reaching millions of people.
Those are massive attacks on reality.
They are. But despite all of those high-profile incidents, empirical research shows no decisive, direct alteration of election outcomes solely attributable to these campaigns. Voter turnout remained stable. The system did not collapse.
But why didn't it collapse? You can't just say the attacks failed so the system is immune.
It didn't collapse because institutions, journalists, fact-checkers, and ultimately voters themselves acted as massive shock absorbers. The liar's dividend exists, yes, I don't deny that, but it assumes a completely passive electorate that just throws its hands up. Our democratic frameworks, combined with active media scrutiny, prove significantly more resilient than the doomsday scenario suggested. The Slovakia case is a perfect example. That fake audio dropped during a pre-election moratorium, when traditional media couldn't officially report on it. It was the absolute worst-case scenario. Yet civil society, independent fact-checkers, and public awareness mobilized rapidly online to neutralize the impact.
I hear that, and the 2024 data is a fair point, but I think looking at 2024 as the baseline of resilience is incredibly dangerous. That was just the opening salvo. Those shock absorbers you mentioned, they are currently fighting a losing battle of attrition.
You think the technology will just outpace the fact-checkers?
It inherently does. A technological arms race between deepfake creators and detection tools permanently favors the creators. Research from the University of Malta highlights this clearly. The rapid evolution of generative models constantly outpaces forensic tools.
Because the models learn from the detection tools. It's an adversarial loop.
Exactly. Yesterday's detection methods, like looking for unnatural blinking, mismatched lighting, or weirdly rendered teeth, become obsolete almost overnight. By the time a detection model learns to spot a specific artifact, the creators have moved on to advanced diffusion models that don't make that mistake anymore.
I agree that artifact hunting is a losing game.
But it gets worse. Bad actors aren't just posting these fakes on public platforms like X or YouTube, where a journalist or a fact-checker can easily flag them. They are utilizing encrypted messaging apps, dark social spaces like WhatsApp and Telegram.
Where moderation is basically impossible by design.
Right. In these spaces, propaganda spreads through what sociologists call cascade logic. It moves upstream and downstream within private, trusted networks of friends and family. It completely bypasses public moderation and those institutional shock absorbers you're relying on. Imagine a fake audio message of a local bank run popping up in your family WhatsApp group. It was forwarded by an uncle you trust. You panic. The fact check on a news site 12 hours later doesn't undo that initial visceral reaction. By the time a journalist publicly debunks a fake video, it has already done its damage in millions of private group chats.
I'm sorry, but I just don't buy that we are defenseless here. Let me tell you why. You are still framing the defense entirely around reactive detection. You're talking about chasing the fakes after they are already released into the wild.
Because they are being released into the wild at an unprecedented scale.
True, But the entire paradigm is shifting toward proactive provenance. We are building the infrastructure of truth directly into the media at the point of creation.
How does that work practically? If the image is forwarded on WhatsApp, how does provenance help me?
Look at initiatives like the Content Authenticity Initiative, and specifically the C2PA Open Standard. These protocols embed secure, cryptographically signed metadata and invisible watermarking into content the absolute moment a photo is taken or a video is rendered.
Wait, so this is happening at the hardware level?
Yes, it can be integrated directly into the camera hardware and software. It creates a tamper-evident trail showing exactly who created it, what camera was used, and crucially, if any AI modification occurred along the way. Think of it like HTTPS for the web. We don't manually verify the code of a secure website, we look for the little padlock icon in the browser. C2PA is essentially building a padlock for reality. We don't need to constantly play whack-a-mole trying to detect the fake if we can cryptographically verify the real. The browser or the messaging app itself can display a verifiable nutrition label for the media.
But relying on cryptographic watermarks assumes that everyday people will actually check those labels or care if they are missing. If a highly incendiary video confirms someone's deep-seated political bias, they are not going to care if it lacks a C2PA cryptographic signature. They are going to share it anyway.
Which is exactly why the technology alone isn't the silver bullet. We have to combine these technical standards with nationwide civic media literacy.
Education as a defense mechanism?
Yes, and it works. Finland is a prime example of this. By embedding media literacy into their national curriculum from a very early age, they have drastically raised the public's baseline ability to navigate digital ecosystems. They teach kids how to evaluate sources, how to recognize algorithmic manipulation, and how to verify information before sharing it. And the research backs this up. It shows that combining technological provenance with robust education builds a hybrid defense that successfully halves misinformation susceptibility. We don't have to rely on people passively absorbing content. We can train them to be active evaluators.
I think we've covered a lot of ground here, and it's clear we look at the same data but see very different futures. Let me summarize my stance in light of this discussion. Because these tools are everywhere now, we've completely lost the automatic baseline trust we used to give to a video or an audio clip. The sheer scale, speed, and undetectable nature of industrialized deception mean that reactive provenance in education simply cannot scale fast enough to protect our shared reality. The resulting reality apathy, combined with the incredibly toxic liar's dividend, represents a permanent paradigm shift. It is a world where bad actors operate with impunity in encrypted networks and where citizens are forced to doubt genuine evidence. I still maintain that this epistemic security is fundamentally shattered, and the trust we once placed in our digital environment has been irreversibly compromised.
And to summarize my opposing view, while the challenge is undeniably severe, treating it as the end of trust vastly underestimates human and institutional adaptability. We survived the advent of photography, film, and digital editing by evolving our frameworks of trust. Today, by embracing cryptographically secure provenance like the C2PA standard, implementing multi-layered integrity checks that look at behavior rather than just pixels, and elevating our digital literacy, society is actively forging a new framework. We are not experiencing the death of truth. We are navigating the difficult transition to a more sophisticated, verified digital ecosystem.
What we certainly both agree on is the critical urgency of this situation. Generative AI represents a defining inflection point in the global information landscape, perhaps the most significant one since the invention of the printing press. The ultimate outcome, whether this technology leads to systemic reality apathy or a fortified, authenticated digital ecosystem, will depend entirely on the regulatory, technological, and societal actions we take right now.
Absolutely. The window for securing a trustworthy digital environment is narrowing quickly, and the stakes for our democratic institutions could not be higher.
And to our audience, the debate doesn't end here. We explicitly encourage you to leave comments, share which perspective you lean towards, and explore the nuanced realities of the digital information ecosystem for yourselves. Thank you for joining us.